Okay, so we went through in the last video some minor audio effects that you can apply to kind of clean up your audio in Adobe Premiere. But another thing that I wanted to show you is if you have Adobe Audition installed on your machine as well, there are some additional tools that might become helpful in that software for editing and cleaning up your audio as well. So I'm going to walk you through a couple of those different things. So basically, the nice thing about Adobe is it's actually going to allow you to move audio files directly from Premiere and open to edit in Audition. So if you just right click on the waveform, scroll down the menu list, you're going to see Edit Clip in Adobe Audition. So go ahead and click that, and if it's not already launched on your computer, it'll actually launch the software for you. The nice thing about it is that Adobe Audition actually makes changes directly to the file. So in a sort of unfortunate manner, it's actually making changes to the file itself as you change them, and so it's changing the original file. However, if you can kind of see here, the difference between these waveforms is that this one is highlighted in green and this one is actually in blue. Why it's like that is because it actually creates an new, what they call extracted audio file, and that's what's actually is opening up in Adobe Audition whenever you move the file over there. So you're actually making a duplicate of the waveform and you're only editing the duplicate. So if you come over to the Adobe Audition software, when you first open it up, you might only see the waveforms here, but we're going to actually look at something called the spectral frequency display. So if it's this little reddish colored button up here towards the top, go ahead and click that. It might take a second to load your preview, but this is essentially what you're going to see. And this is a waveform file that is actually showing frequency up and down on the y-axis here across time, which again moves left to right. So it's actually showing you, and you can actually zoom into this if you want to kind of give yourself a closer look, which we're going to need to do. It's showing you the plotted frequencies as they happen across the time for your specific audio file. So we're just going to take a quick listen here and identify a sound that we want to remove. So if you hear behind her there, I'll play it again for you. There's actually a door that closes, and we want to try and see if we can clean that up. Now, unfortunately, you're not always going to be able to completely remove background sounds, especially if the person is talking over them. Now, if she was taking a speech break or something, it's far easier to do, but since she's kind of talking over the sound in the background, it's not always as easy as it seems to clean up those sounds. But we're going to kind of zoom in here a little bit. I want to kind of start to be able to identify some horizontal lines in these waveforms, so you can kind of see I have a strong horizontal there, some additional horizontals forming, so kind of zoom in until you can see those horizontal lines. So we'll kind of leave it right there. We can kind of see some strong horizontals. So there's actually two different ways that you can do this, and what we're going to do, because she's speaking over top of it, we're actually just going to start to kind of select the portions of the waveform here that are in relationship to the door closing. So again, we're going to play back over this. So you can kind of see these very strong verticals. There's actually two clicking noises in that door closing. So if you listen closely, whenever the playhead gets over top of these two verticals, you're going to see it and hear it pretty strongly. So right in there is where our door is closing. So now the only tricky part is to kind of identify which of these horizontal lines are her speaking and which of them are the door actually making the noise. Again, like I said, you're not always going to get it perfect, but we're going to go ahead and give it a shot. So up here in your toolbar, you're actually going to click the paintbrush selection tool. Okay, you can adjust the size using the bracket keys on your keypad. We're going to kind of keep that around 15 pixels and with an opacity of about 50 so that we're not knocking out complete sounds. So as you can see, if you look at the rest of this waveform file where she is just speaking and there's no doors closing, strong horizontals here, a little bit lower here, and then of course some minor sounds that are occurring in the file there. So really we're kind of seeing there that a lot of her speech lives lower in these frequency patterns, somewhere between here and the bottom of the file. So that tells me that a lot of these horizontal lines at the higher frequencies are going to be door closing sounds. So right off the bat, we're going to kind of start to click and drag and basically paint over a lot of those horizontal lines. Now, if you hold Shift down while you're painting, it's going to allow you to paint more than one line at a time. If you don't hold Shift, it's going to restart your paint selection every time. So hold Shift while you paint. And again, like I said, we're just starting to select some of these higher frequency areas here because we can kind of see that they're not consistent with her speech patterns later in the file. So if you using the playhead between these two marquees, it's only going to play the sounds that we selected. It's going to take out everything else and only play what's underneath the paintbrush. So we can kind of start to identify what we have selected. So we'll play through that. So you can kind of hear parts of the higher pitch end of the door closing if you listen again. So we get those two very strong clicks in there that we're going to be able to remove from the sound. So now we're going to come down here, we're going to actually change the opacity, we're going to take it down just a bit since her voice is intermixed, we don't want to capture quite everything. So again, we're going to hold Shift, we're going to start to kind of just again paint over some of those very strong horizontal lines. And since doors slamming are typically primarily a lower pitched sound, we're going to try and kind of keep it towards the bottom here. And again, you can kind of see we might start to hinder some of her voice because you see some strong horizontals here where she's just talking, so we might start to capture some of her voice speaking there. The word I believe she's saying is C, so we're going to try and listen for whether or not we hear parts of her voice behind that. So we'll play through it again. So you can kind of start to hear the lower parts of her voice underneath that. We'll play that one more time just so that you can hear. You can kind of start to hear her voice. Listen carefully for it. So what we're going to do is we're going to keep it right there. We're going to take that sound print out first to see what that does to our sound, and then we can go back and continue to make changes to it. We don't want to get rid of her voice entirely, so we are going to just try and keep as much of her voice in there as we can. So what we're going to do is you want to left click, you want to capture the noise print. Little confirmation message is going to come up that says that selection that you have painted across there is going to be the noise print that opens next time noise reduction is launched. Okay, so now that you get that confirmation message, you actually want to deselect because you've saved your noise print. You're going to go up to Effects, come down to Noise Reduction and Restoration, and there's that noise reduction process that it mentioned in that confirmation. So you're going to go ahead and click on that. It's going to load up, and what it's actually doing is the currently set noise print that we just selected with the paintbrush is what it's going to use to reduce the noise. So we're actually going to just go ahead and keep everything as default for the first time through. Apply that. It's going to render it there. We're going to come back and we're going to play through that again, see if we notice any change. So it is still kind of present, but we were able to muffle it a little bit. And again, you're not going to get that perfect elimination of those sounds in every case because unfortunately if frequencies are very similar between their voice and the sound, you're not going to be able to remove it all without starting to distort their voice. But that's a little bit of an idea of how you can kind of change and adjust sounds and remove some background noises in Adobe Audition.